Hello, welcome to the Derek Deputy Video Game Show. I'm Derek Deputy, I'm the host. This is the show where I just kind of talk about the last week or so in video games and the things I find interesting in particular. Uh, Make sure you follow or subscribe, whatever the button looks like on the service you're listening to. Right now, I've only been uploading this to YouTube and Spotify, but I do plan on getting it to other podcasting platforms here soon. Let's get straight into things with Street Fighter 6. So I am not a big fighting game guy. I enjoy the types of fighting games that are based on other fandoms like Injustice, Marvel vs. Capcom, things based on other things, Smash Brothers, the Power Rangers fighting game that came out on everything a few years back. Those types of games. But Street Fighter 6 is looking pretty good and could be the game that gets me into fighting games. Uh, for me, the problem with fighting games has been that they've never really had a whole lot of single player content. Back in the day before online play, if you didn't have like someone there, there just wasn't much to do in fighting games, and their single player content has just never been amazing. They usually have like an arcade mode, maybe some kind of story mode, but the story mode is usually just going through a bunch of fights with different fighters. Like it's nothing. It's never been anything impressive. But Street Fighter 6 is looking pretty good. They had a presentation here recently. It was like 45 minutes, and almost the entire thing was about the single player. Uh, I think the DLC looks fine. Like, I know people are excited about Akuma. I've Street Fighter 2 was the last Street Fighter game that I got really into. So, like, Akuma, I just don't care that much. The clubs seem interesting. Not really for me, though. The World Tour is the main thing I want to talk about. It's the main thing that has my interest. Uh, it is an RPG almost built into Street Fighter. You still go into the traditional fights, but you make your own character. You decide what they look like, decide who they are, give them different stats, I assume. Uh, and it just looks kind of like an RPG type thing. You go through, you play, you're trained by the other Street Fighter characters, you do all kinds of fights, and you go through a story. And it just looks very good. Single player content is what brings new players into fighting games, in my opinion. And without it, you're going to have trouble bringing in new players. It's possible, but the casual audience is not going to pick up your game without any kind of like single player. And this looks like it. I also hope other fighting games learn from this, to be honest, because quite frankly, if the next Injustice game, for example, if the next Injustice has a fighting game as like an RPG, like a single player RPG type mode, like the World Tour in Street Fighter 6, that would be a day one purchase for me. I have at this point sworn off buying any more NetherRealm games on day one, mostly because like they'll release and they'll make you pay for, and if you buy it day one, you'll have to pay for the DLC separately. They might have a $100 deal or whatever, where you can just get all the DLC, maybe more than that. Now the game prices are going up, but like they'll do that, and then later, let's say a year, 2 years down the road, they'll have like a $60, $70 deal where you just buy it, get everything, and even get extra stuff. And I don't know. I've been betrayed by NetherRealm in that regards enough times I've just said I'm not buying any of their games day one. But if if they look at Capcom Street Fighter 6 and be like, hey, let's do that for the next Street Fighter, for the next Injustice game, man, that would be great. Or even if they do another Marvel versus Capcom, and make it kind of like this, since Capcom is the one making this game, so that's much more likely. That would be a day one buy for me. That would be a day one buy. I would love that. But I would love to hear your thoughts on Street Fighter 6. You can find me on Twitter, or this has been uploaded to YouTube. You can comment there. But next, I would like to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. So why am I talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel? Well, for one, it's a game I enjoyed when it first came out. I kind of fell off after a while. It's really not designed to be a Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator as much as it is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Esport. And I was really wanting something that's more of a simulator, but I still enjoyed it when it came out and had a lot of fun with it for a good 3 to 6 months probably when it first came out. But what I want to talk about today is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel won a Webby Award, which I find interesting. It won in the Puzzle Strategy and Trivia category. It was not the only winner. Escape Academy also won. Apparently, 2 games could win in the same category, which is kind of odd, but whatever. And I did look at the other nominees, and the other nominees weren't anything I've really heard of. And given this was a People's Voice winner in the Puzzle, Strategy, and Trivia category, being a game that people have heard of compared to a bunch of games people haven't heard of, is kind of a big deal. So it was probably a given that it was going to win this after it was nominated, but just being nominated is a pretty big deal. So I just found this neat. I'm glad it won an award. I know when it first came out, there were a lot of people playing it on Steam and stuff. It was one of the most popular games on Steam that week. So it shouldn't be that surprising. But it's still neat to see a Konami game, really, winning an award. I know this isn't exactly the type of Konami game people were wanting, but it's still neat to see a Konami win a game winning an award. It's neat to see Yu-Gi-Oh! Winning an award all these years later. I'm a big fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Pretty big fan of Konami. I was just glad to see this and wanted to bring it up here. But now we're going to take a quick break. I will be back in just a moment. So each week when I do this podcast, I'm going to be trying to talk about whatever game I've been playing lately. I won't always be able to do this because sometimes a game takes a few weeks for me to get through. Limited time and all of that. But it's something I'm going to be trying to do most weeks. And a lot of time this will be an older game, maybe a year, 2, 3 years old, because I do prefer to wait to get games on sale. I mostly play on Switch and PlayStation, but occasionally I'll play on PC. And so, yeah, that's why a lot of Switch games don't go down in price or take a while to go down in price. And PlayStation games are usually a little bit quicker, but they might still take a little while. And that's really what it comes down to. I usually play last year's games because I wait for them to go down in price. Uh, there are exceptions. Games I really enjoy, I might uh, get right away. It's just going to vary. Once in a while, it might be a retro game. Uh, this week, I have been playing a game that's a little bit older, although it is still on Steam, surprisingly. It only released on PC, to my knowledge, around 2008, if I remember right. This week, I've been playing Spore. Uh, what is Spore? It is a pretty unique game where you evolve, you create a species, a microscopic organism, and you play through the stages of evolution. You evolve it from the cell stage to a creature stage, to a tribal stage, to a civilization stage, to a space stage. And each stage has its own unique gameplay. In the cell stage, you're just a single cell organism trying to survive and grow. In the creature stage, you are a creature evolving in the wild, or surviving in the wild, that is. In the tribal stage, you run a tribe of pre-civilized creatures. In the civilization stage, you do run like a town or a city, or well, it looks kind of like a town or a city. It's really more like a country. It's difficult to explain. And then in the space stage, you are traveling through space, trying to make it to the center of the universe. And then each stage has about 2 or 3 different methods of beating it. In the cell stage, you are just trying to survive, but you can survive as a carnivore, or an omnivore, or a herbivore. In the creature stage, you beat it by either befriending a bunch of different creatures, or you can destroy a bunch of creatures and make them go extinct, or a little bit of both and end up in the middle. In the tribal stage, it's kind of similar to the creature stage, where you're befriending other tribes or going to war to other tribes, or a little bit of both. And in the civilization stage, you are either trying to buy out other countries, you are trying to destroy other countries in war, or you're trying to take them over religiously, or a little bit of all of the above. And then in the space stage, you are really just trying to make it to the center of the universe, but you have to do this with different allies. You make it a war with other planets, and things like that. It's a very unique game. It has 2 expansions, and it's a lot of fun. I played it non-stop almost the other day, and have been having just a ton of fun with it, revisiting it. I did play it at release, and it is something I go back to every few years. It is a very fun game. It's a bit of a cult classic with a dedicated community online. It reviewed extremely well at release, although I don't think it won a whole lot of awards. It wasn't nominated for Game of the Year or anything that year. And it isn't something I hear a whole lot of people talking about today. When you hear people talking about classic games of that era, it doesn't typically get brought up for some reason, which is a bit odd because it was a game that reviewed so well at the time. Maybe it just didn't sell that amazingly well. I haven't actually ever looked up the selling stats, the statistics of how well it sold at the time. So maybe it's just because not a whole lot of people bought it. But it is a game that I bought at the time, or had bought for me. I don't remember. And I just really enjoy this game. It's something I go back to every few years. It was designed by Will Wright, the same person who designed The Sims, and it was made by like the same team as The Sims. So if you are big into The Sims, it might be something you enjoy It's just a very fun game made by EA, which is a company I'm going to talk about in depth a little bit more later. It was made when EA was in their prime, and some people haven't been super happy or wasn't super happy with EA for a few years there. I think they're starting to get better, but I'm going to talk more about that later. For now, I would like to move on to talking about PlayStation's Horizon series made by Guerrilla Games. So Guerrilla Games is a studio owned by Sony in their PlayStation division. They're particularly well known for the Killzone franchise, I believe, and in recent years, the Horizon franchise, which is a franchise that I really enjoy. It takes place, it is an open world game that takes place, for those who don't know, like I think most people who would listen to such a podcast would probably know this, but for those who don't, it is an open world game, takes place in a futuristic world dominated by machines, and humans have to survive in these smaller tribes, and is pretty fun series. And today, Horizon 3 was confirmed when Guerrilla Games posted a blog post talking about company restructuring, or studio restructuring, that is. They posted on Twitter, which, by the way, I know I've been forgetting to cite things as much this episode. It's because pretty much everything so far, and most of this episode is stuff that the companies just posted directly on Twitter, to be honest. So if you're wanting to find more about anything I discuss, just check social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. These companies usually post this stuff themselves. I most of the time, I will cite things a little bit better. Today, it just hasn't been happening because I've mostly been finding this stuff on Twitter. But that's besides the point. I want to talk about Horizon. So, and excuse the clicking noise, because I'm going to be reading this straight off their blog. After an almost incredible 20 years at Guerrilla, our studio director and executive producer, Angie Smets, is starting a new role as head of development strategy at PlayStation Studios. Then it has a quote from them. I don't think that's really that important. The important part, we are also grateful for the leadership Angie has provided for Guerrilla and wish her all the best for her new adventure. In terms of new structure, Guerrilla is happy to announce that our management team now consists of Joel Eschler. I can't pronounce. I hope I pronounced that right. And Hella Schmidt, alongside Jen Bart Van Beek, and it lists their previous positions. We all have full confidence in our new leadership as they steer Guerrilla toward a bright future, expanding the world of Horizon with Aloy's next adventure in our exciting online project. So that's 2 games that we're finding out about. The online project actually leaked a little bit back, or at least screenshots and some video. It looks pretty fun. And Horizon 3 is something I am very excited for. Horizon 1 it was just okay. Like, I don't know. I just had trouble getting into it at the time. The gameplay wasn't amazing. I don't know. I just had trouble getting into it. I really liked the story, but I had trouble getting into the gameplay. Graphics were good. But Horizon Forbidden West was the first game I played on PlayStation 5. It came with my PlayStation 5, and I really enjoyed Forbidden West. That game was really addictive, and it wasn't like that different from the first one. But like, I don't know, I got way more into Forbidden West for some reason. It was really fun. I enjoyed exploring that world, fighting with the machines, crafting, all of it. That game was amazingly fun. I got really into it, and and I'm excited for Horizon 3. The online game is probably something I might try if it's free to play. If it's not free to play, I'll probably skip. It's supposed to be kind of like Monster Hunter, and that sounds kind of neat. I'm not a big Monster Hunter guy, but I could get into that if it's free to play. I don't think I would buy that. But Horizon 3, that could be that could almost be a day one buy. I don't know for a fact, but like I really got into the second one. First one was just okay, but the second one was so good. I love that game, and I am excited for more of that. I haven't played the DLC yet. I plan on it. I'll probably talk about that whenever I play it. But for now, I am excited for more Horizon. The second one left on a bit of a cliffhanger, sort of. So we knew it was probably going to be coming out eventually. But I'm glad it sounds like they've at least started development. I imagine it will be a little while before we hear more. Uh, I hope the game is just a straight up a trilogy and that they don't do a fourth one. Uh, because that's just like what I think would make most sense for the story. But I'm sure they'll probably do plenty more with Horizon. I'm also pretty hyped for the TV series. That sounds like it could be really good. Uh, so I don't know. I really just wanted to talk about Horizon because I enjoyed that game. But I do find this news to be reassuring. That would be the best word for it. I am glad to know that they are still working on Horizon stuff. But now I would like to talk about something else. So those who know me know that I am a pretty big Star Trek fan. I enjoy most sci-fi, really. Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, all of that. But this is important because Star Trek is a video game coming out. It was announced, I think, at the Game Awards 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago. I don't remember when it was announced. Feels like I've been looking forward to it longer than December. So maybe it was 2021. I don't remember. It might have been a PlayStation presentation. I don't remember. But it is called Star Trek Resurgence, and we finally have a release date. Star Trek Resurgence is releasing on May 23rd, which May is a pretty crammed month for video games, but still, I'm excited. It's being developed by people who are either reforming Telltale or they used to work for Telltale. I don't know the exact relationship there, to be honest. But it's going to be a Telltale-like game, which I've struggled to get into in the past, but I think Star Trek is like the perfect format for that type of game. So I'm willing to give it another try. There was also other story details released. I did not look too far into that, knowing this is like a Telltale type game, because the story is like an important aspect of those types of games. So I want to go in as spoiler free as possible. They posted all the details on their Twitter, though. From their Twitter, prepare your mark on the galaxy in our interactive narrative adventure game, where you're at the heart of an original Star Trek story, and the fate of your crew comes down to your choices. It sounds like you play as the first officer. I think I read somewhere you might play as multiple characters, but I think the first officer is one of them, from what I read. And I'm pretty excited. This was actually just announced. I'm just finding out about this before recording this. And I'm excited to play this game. I have been looking forward to this for a while. Star Trek has an odd history with video games. There's been a few decent ones, but like, it's not something they've been able to get down perfectly well, especially not in recent years. And so I'm excited to play a Star Trek game in 2023. But now we're going to take a quick break, the last one, and I'll be back in just a second. I mentioned earlier I wanted to spend some time talking about EA, and that's true. I do want to talk about EA a little bit, and I also want to talk about Square Enix, because I feel like these two companies are starting to reverse in the way they're thought about. Maybe, well, maybe not in the way they're thought about, but in the way in what they're producing. So EA. We'll start with EA. EA used to be really well known for some very quality titles up until about the 2010s. And through most of the 2010s, maybe not all, but most, maybe 2012 onward or so, it's hard to put an exact year on it, they kind of started to go downhill, focused more on microtransactions, and just was like a toxic gaming company. Meanwhile, Square Enix it's originally a merger of two other companies, and they've generally always been pretty well known for their RPGs. They create games like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, etc. And the reason I'm comparing these two companies specifically, because it does, even though you still have people who think of EA as like the toxic company that it was, it feels like it's starting to reverse and starting to release some decent stuff again. And Square Enix is the opposite. Square Enix, traditionally known for their RPGs, have recently been going outwards in different directions, I'll say. I mean, they always have made other games, but like it seems to have been a bigger focus for a while there, and it wasn't going well, and now they've sold a bunch of their IPs, and it's just kind of a weird situation to see these two companies reversing positions, because you still have a lot of people who think very poorly of EA, even though in the last few years, EA has actually been on the top of their game. They released Unravel 2, and the original Unravel for that matter, Apex Legends, which I know that has some of the toxic stuff, the microtransactions and stuff, but it's also free to play. But then they released like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, It Takes Two, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, the Dead Space remake, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. They're currently developing Dragon Age Dreadwolf, Skate 4, an Iron Man game, two other single-player Marvel games, one of which I think is likely to be Black Panther or something. There's a rumor going around about that. Or there was at one point. I think I heard something about them doing Black Panther. I know there was another Black Panther project elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure EA is also doing one. And then there's also like Project Renee, which is likely Sims 5. And I think I heard a rumor about an untitled Mass Effect game. Not sure if that is true or not. I think I read that on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddits at some point. Regardless, even though they're still doing some not so great things with their sports games, EA seems to be on the up and up. They aren't quite the old EA again, but that seems to be the general direction that they're headed. Whereas Square seems to be heading in the opposite direction. Square Enix is not. So to be fair, their RPGs are still hitting pretty well. I think people are excited for the next Final Fantasy game. And really, Final Fantasy is what's been keeping that company afloat, to be honest. Partially thanks to the MMO 14, right? I think it is. 14 is the MMO, I think. And I'm not a Final Fantasy fan, so I don't remember. But that is mostly what's keeping that company afloat. In recent years, they had to sell the Tomb Raider franchise, along with a bunch of their other American IPs, which was really weird. They sold it to Embracer Group, and Embracer turned around and made a deal with Amazon with the Tomb Raider IP and made their money back plus some. Like, the deal Square Enix made with Embracer to sell their IPs and studios was really bad for Square Enix. They really undervalued their stuff. But on top of that, they've also released the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters with the text that no one liked, the fonts no one liked. People got real upset about that. I know they're fixing it for the Switch, but it's still something that happened. They released Forspoken. The people got upset about the Kingdom Hearts cloud versions for Switch. Kingdom Hearts 3 did not meet people's general expectations. I'm sure it sold perfectly well, but generally speaking, people seem to be down on it. It didn't review as well as the previous Kingdom Hearts games. Chocobo GP, people didn't like. Babylon's Fall, people also didn't like Balan Wonderland. People didn't like The Quiet Man. I know these aren't quite the same type of mistakes EA used to be making for a while there, but it seems one after another, anytime Square Enix tries to release a game that is not just one of their traditional JRPGs, it doesn't seem to go their way. Granted, they did the Life is Strange games, and I do really love those. But like, it's really, off the top of my head at least, or they were involved in the Life is Strange games. I'm not sure if they actually made those off the top of my head, or at least in one of them. I don't know the exact relationship there. Point is, Square Enix does not seem to be doing a great job here lately with developing games, and I think that's a little bit. And EA seems to be doing actually a pretty decent job. I know people so upset about Madden, so a little upset about the FIFA or whatever it's called now, but generally speaking, EA's games have been reviewing well lately. Square Enix's have not been reviewing well lately, and I just think it's rather odd how these two companies seem to have switched positions with each other in that way. But I do want to move on to another subject. Speaking of EA, let's talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So I'm using a Polygon article as my source for this, although I don't think they're the original source. Last week, Electronic Arts, EA, revealed hardware requirements for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order for PC players. And the big thing, the thing most people would notice right away, the thing I think might throw people off, is it requires 155 gigabytes of storage. And they, of course, recommend that on an SSD. And then on PS5, it's going to be 150 gigabytes. I don't have the other storage sizes. I think most of them are a little bit smaller than that, but most of them are between 140 155 gigabytes storage to install Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is the upcoming Star Wars game made by EA. I mentioned that. Personally, I think it's going to be very good. I'm excited to see where they go with the story and gameplay. Although I'll probably wait to pick it up in a sale. I don't think I'm going to buy it at release. But regardless, 150 or whatever gigabytes of storage to install this game. That is insane. I've heard a few different discussions from people who are more in the know more about this than I would, who are are thinking it could have to do with the graphics, the textures, that sort of thing, which is not impossible. It is next gen only on consoles, as it's not going to PS4 or Xbox One. But I can't help but think there has to be more to it than that. Uh, Even texture files, like, granted, texture files would take up a lot of space, but we've had other PS5 exclusive, Xbox Series X exclusive games before that don't take that much uh, space. So I don't know what's going on there, but it seems like a weird situation for a game to be that large. And what's particularly upsetting about this for many people is if you prefer physical games, Jedi Survivor, the physical disc will only have a portion of the game, uh, most likely. Blu-rays are only 100 gigabytes, so a 150 gigabyte game is not going to fit on a Blu-ray. They are just not going to. I'm sure there'll be a physical version, but like the physical version is just not going to include the entire game. You will have to download part of it, and that's Switch has been doing that kind of thing for years, and even some games on PlayStation and Xbox have done it before, but not quite like this, not like this sort of game. And it's just kind of an odd situation. Uh, but I want to move on to the next subject. I would like to talk about the Cult of the Lamb and the new DLC. So last year, Cult of the Lamb released, and it was a little bit popular because it had certain Twitch integration. I played the game, and I really enjoyed it. It is one part like sim type game, where you're like building your cult where they hang out and that sort of thing, and then the other part is more like an action game, roguelike almost. Think like Binding of Isaac almost, that sort of game. And so you'll go on these runs, come back, use what you gained in those runs, like resources and stuff to build stuff on your cult. And it was just a lot of fun. Uh, and I really enjoyed it. This year they're putting out a new free update. And I gotta be honest, when it comes to like DLC and these free updates, like 6 months or a year after the game released, I'm not always about it. A lot of the time I've moved on since then. That's also part of the reason I sometimes wait to play games. That way I can play them after they get any of these types of updates. And it just works out better for me. I have a hard time going back to revisit games after I've already moved on to something else. It's part of the reason I haven't played the Horizon Forbidden West DLC yet. And it's part of the reason I'm not sure I'm going to go back to Cult of the Lamb for this. I might go back eventually. I don't know, but probably not anytime soon. I just have other games I want to play. But the DLC does look good. Citing an article from VG 24/7, coined Relics of the Old Faith, the free update to the roguelike boasts new enemies, deeper combat, and plenty of other features that players will be pleased to see. To entice new players into the world of Cult of the Lamb in this DLC, developer Massive Monster has also discounted the base game by 35%. If you're curious to what exactly Relics of the Old Faith is adding to Cult of the Lamb, look no further. There's an entirely new storyline to embark on following the completion of the base game, and with it are dozens more collectibles, upgrades, and character encounters. 37 new relics, new sermon upgrades, new crusades, new encounters, a new character, new character cards, critters, and buildings that all have been added for you to discover. This is a lot of content. I just wish it was there when the game released. Like, it's hard to get excited for this type of. For me personally, I know a lot of people do really enjoy these types of free updates, but for me, it's hard to get excited because like I've already moved on. There's also apparently a photo mode, new enemies, new mini bosses, and forgotten commandment stones that players can use to unlock doctrines that they didn't previously choose. Uh, this looks good, honestly. This update looks like exactly what I would have want to be added to Cult of the Lamb. It is a very good update. I've moved on, and there's a lot of games coming out here soon. I'm just not sure this is what could get me personally back into Cult of the Lamb, but it does make me want to revisit it eventually. It is definitely a good update, and I am excited to see what happens with it when it releases. But for now, I am Derek Deputy. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. That'd be great. If you're listening on Spotify or another podcast service, thank you. Make sure you're following, subscribing, whatever. And I will see you in the next episode.